I'm not sure exactly where I left off, but we see that Paul had the opportunity that he directed not towards the worship of a transcendent God that was all divinity, all qualities, but in an embodiment that had the all the qualities and then some of what he saw from the worship around him of others. Other beings or projections of beings or whatever the case would have been with all those statues and stuff. But the abundance of wealth had its not unusual effect of breeding self-indulgence, low worldliness, sensuality, and carnal corruption of the most offensive character. These were among the chief obstacles to the prosperity of the Christian church there. It forms one of the prominent topics in both of the apostles' letters to the converts, and it is evident that they suffered severely from these causes. Hither Paul came from Athens, and here, after having first declared his message to his own countrymen, and by the majority of them being rejected, he turned to the Gentiles, among whom he made many converts, and it is a remarkable fact that, though Paul always maintained the doctrine that it was the duty of the churches to support those who preached the word to them, yet in this wealthy city, where evidently there were many Christian converts, for some reason he chose to waive this claim and support himself by daily labor as a mechanic, with some assistance received from places previously visited. Fortunately, he had not only, like the children of the Jews generally, learned a trade in his youth, but here at Corinth he had met and formed the acquaintance of two persons of the same trade, whom he joined in industrial labor, and who became also his efficient fellow workers in spiritual things. For a year and a half he continued here, pursuing his secular occupation and at the same time laying the foundations of a powerful Christian church. Acts 17:18, 1 through 22, Claudius Emperor, 41 through 54, the common era, events of the lesson are supposed to have occurred in 52 through 54 of the common era, the rest of the house of Lydia, and the departure from Philippi, 16, verse 40, the journey to and arrival at Thessalonica, 17:1, gives some account of this city, state what Paul and Silas did in Thessalonica, and the result. Verse 2 through 4, the conduct of the unbelieving Jews, what social element did they make use of, and what did they do in the accusation made? Do you discern any important but unintended truth? 5 through 7, action of the city authorities. The apostles' party went away privately to Berea. Character of the Berean Jews and their sensible conduct. The consequence, 10 through 12. What class is particularly mentioned both here and at Thessalonica as among the believers? 4 and 12. Emissaries from Thessalonica and their malign influence. Departure of Paul and arrival at Athens, 13 through 15, gives some account of the city. Can you mention any of the eminent men among the citizens? What was its religious character? How was Paul affected as he looked about the city? What did he do? What schools of philosophers did he encounter? What did these schools generally believe? What impression did Paul make on them? 16 through 18. Paul on Mars Hill. What was this place, the object of his being there, a judicial trial or merely a public hearing? What was a noted characteristic of the people? 19 through 21. The speech was the opening remark, a compliment or reproof? To what might the phrase, too superstitious, far better and more liberal, your carefulness in religion, have reference? Does he propose to introduce any new deity among them? deity meaning like a functionary of worship. So, whether it was worship worthy or not. How is this skillfully avoided without, in the least, compromising his own faith? Give the line of argument and the main points, 22 through 31. At what point was his discourse interrupted? With what disposition did the hearers treat this doctrine of the resurrection? Were there any converts? 32 through 34. Do we ever hear of a church at Athens? Paul at Corinth gives some account of this city, its geographical situation, its political, intellectual, social, and moral condition. What new acquaintances does the apostle make, and what glimpses do we get of his condition in life and of the independence of his character? 18, 1 through 3. Labors on the Sabbath among the Jews, arrival at Silas and Timothy, and the putting forth of more vigorous efforts, rejection of the gospel by many of the Jews, though some believe, the Gentiles addressed, many of whom are converted, but, non-Jews. Gentiles isn't an appropriate term. Paul's vision and encouragement. How long was this ministry among the Corinthians? 4 through 11. Disturbance and persecution by unbelieving Jews, or Jews believing in Judaism of some sort. I don't think there ever was one Judaism. By the time you had Judaism, it was Judaisms. Paul's arrest and accusation before the proconsul. How did Gallio treat the case? The conduct of the Jews provokes the violence of the Greeks. Gallio's indifference. 12 through 17. Paul's subsequent course. Who accompanied him in his journey, and whither did he go? What was his ultimate destination and his object? Return to Antioch, 18 through 22. The propagation of the gospel, 8. The epistles to the Thessalonians. Though the writing affixed at the end of these epistles names Athens as the place where they were sent, a careful examination of all the data makes it evident that the apostles wrote them sometime during his residence at Corinth. Though, in the order of their arrangement, they are among the last of Paul's letters to the general churches, yet in the order of time they are regarded by component critics as the earliest of all his communications of this kind. Well, perhaps Athens was where we have the copy that we have. Expect some differences based on the other Bible manuscripts of other books and letters, or however you want to phrase those. The first epistle was doubtless written during the early part of Paul's residence in Corinth. Silas and Timothy had been left in charge of the work at Thessalonica when Paul departed to go to Athens, but they were expected to join him soon after. We have already seen that they arrived at Corinth just at the time when Paul was most severely pressed in his contest with the unbelieving Jews. The intelligence which they brought was doubtless the occasion of the first letter. The other epistle seems to have been written something like a year later. Each of the epistles of Paul appears to have some one especial characteristic. That of the letters to Thessalonians is the subject of the second coming of Christ, to which some allusion is made in nearly every chapter, though for the most part only casually in the first epistle. This subject had engaged the attention of the members of the church in Thessalonica to an unusual degree, and many of the brethren were morbidly affected by it, misinterpreting certain expressions. In the first letter, some appear to have regarded the event as so near that they were neglecting their business and were falling into fanatical ways concerning it. It was, in part, to correct these evils that the second epistle was written. Both abound in affectionate counsels and wholesome suggestions to the persecuted and otherwise afflicted band of believers. First epistle, Claudius, Emperor, 41 through 54 of the Common Era, date of the epistles, 52 or 53. Where was this epistle probably written? Who are joined with Paul in the salutation? Can you think of any reason for this? See Acts 17, verse 10, and 1 Thessalonians 3:2. What are some of the things concerning this church for which the apostle gives thanks? 1, 2 through 6. What important position did this church occupy, and what had been the effect? 7 and 8. What evidence is there that these Christians had formerly been heathen instead of Jews? 9 and 10. Paul reminds them of the circumstances under which he came to them. What were some of these? 2, and Acts 16:12 through 17:14. How is Paul's sincerity evinced? 2, 1 through 5. What do you gather respecting his dependence upon them for support, and his reasons for this? Verse 6 through 9. See also 2 Thessalonians 3, 8 and 9. Also his action at Corinth. What was Paul's method among them? 2, 10 through 12. The effect of it. 13. Verse 13. What were some of the conditions which made their state similar to that of the Jewish converts? What Jewish opposition does he refer to? What opposition had the Thessalonians encountered? 14 through 16. What had Paul's longing to know about them while he was in Athens resulted in? What was the effect? 3, 1 through 9. What did he still desire? 10 through 13. Some instructions on practical morals. Give the principal duties enjoined. 4, 1 through 12. What statements does he make concerning the second advent and the resurrection? 13 through 17. What fears appear to have been entertained by the Thessalonians? 13. How does he allay them? 14. And so on. Does he give any intimation concerning the exact time? What does he teach? 5, 1 through 3. How are the Christians to be prepared for the great day? Verse 4 through 10. What other allusions to this event are found in this epistle? See the last verses of chapters 1, 2, and 3. Special brief exhortations. Give them in order, 12 through 22. The second epistle, that's these final 4 questions of this lesson. Where and when was this probably written? What appears to have been the character of the church at Thessalonica at this time? 1, 3, and 4. What would be the consequences to persecutors and persecuted? What great event does he describe? 5 through 10. What erroneous impressions does he correct? 2, 1 and 2. What are to be the conditions precedent to this event? Verse 3, 4, and 8 through 10. When are men in danger of being left to believe in lies and delusions, and the destruction consequent? Verse 11 and 12. How did these Christians stand in this respect? Verse 13 and 14. What are some of the things for which the apostle asks? Which the apostle asks the prayers of these brethren? 3, 1 and 2. What confidence is expressed? 3 through 5. What command does he lay upon them? Verse 6. What right had he to give this order? Was there reason for it? Verse 12 and 13. What was the general principle of the relation of the apostles to the churches in respect of support? 1 Corinthians 9, 13 and 14. Why did he not claim this right? 7 through 9. What is the general benediction? Verse 16. What is the personal? Why? 2. Why 2 epistles? Who knows? There could have been more And it appears there's more of some of this New Testament stuff, not just Gospels, but otherwise that was just not included.